At my husband's will reading, my daughter-in-law stood up, pointed at me, and said, "She doesn't deserve a penny," in front of the entire family. I was stunned. After 48 years of marriage, I was being erased like I'd never existed. I'm Evelyn Harper, a 70-year-old widow who stayed quiet for too long, but that day changed everything. What she didn't know? My husband left me more than memories. He left me power. Want to know what I did with it? Stick around and tell me. Have you ever been blindsided by someone in your own family? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. The mahogany table looked longer than usual, or maybe it was just me, seated alone at the far end where the light didn't quite reach. A sterile glow from the overhead fluorescents reflected off the polished surface like a frozen river, cold and unforgiving. I folded my hands in my lap, steadying them, even as my stomach twisted itself into knots. Jessica sat directly across from Mr. Kaplan, tapping the end of her Mont Blanc pen against a yellow notepad. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound sharp, deliberate, like a metronome before a performance. She didn't look at me, not directly, but the slant of her glance cut deeper than any words ever had. Her husband, my eldest son, Andrew, sat beside her, arms crossed tightly across his chest, eyes fixed on a spot just beyond the conference room wall. Daniel, my younger son, offered a brief smile when our eyes met, though his jaw was set. He hadn't said much since we arrived. Mr. Kaplan adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to read the last will and testament of William Harper." Paper rustled as he peeled open the sealed envelope. I heard the faint scrape of someone's chair, nerves probably, or maybe impatience. I kept my gaze on the empty seat beside me. That had always been William's spot. Even now, I half expected him to come bustling in late with his usual joke about traffic or missing golf clubs, but the seat remained still, untouched. I, William Nathaniel Harper, being of sound mind and body. Mr. Kaplan began the familiar legal cadence. A sudden clatter made me jump. "I'm sorry," Jessica said, loud and clear. Her voice cut through the room like ice cracking underfoot. "Before we go any further, I have something to say." Mr. Kaplan paused, blinking. "Mrs. Harper, Jessica, this is highly irregular. We typically—" "No, I insist." She stood, heels clicking against the hardwood. "This affects us all, doesn't it?" She turned, facing the rest of us now. Not the lawyer, not even Andrew, just me. Her expression was calm, even composed, but I saw it, just below the surface. Satisfaction. "I don't believe my mother-in-law deserves a penny of my father-in-law's estate," she said flatly. The room fell utterly still. I heard the clock ticking above the bookshelf. I couldn't even feel my breath. "She was absent," Jessica continued, cold, more committed to her little book club than to William's health. "Ask anyone here. How many times did she skip appointments? How often did she forget to attend family events?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Jessica," Daniel said quietly, "that's enough." "No," she snapped. "It isn't. We all tiptoe around the truth, but someone needs to say it. She was never really there for him, not when it mattered." Andrew shifted uncomfortably. Still no eye contact. His silence stung more than her accusations. "I called William every day," Jessica said. "I scheduled his appointments. I made sure his pillboxes were filled." Her voice rose slightly with each statement, no longer calm. Meanwhile, she just lived in the same house, sharing space, not care. Michael, William's brother, finally leaned forward. "You're out of line." Jessica didn't flinch. Or maybe I'm the only one finally being honest. I wanted to speak, to remind them that William had asked for space, for dignity, that I'd honored that I'd been there, quietly, in ways she never saw. But my voice remained buried beneath the weight of grief and disbelief. Mr. Kaplan cleared his throat again. "Shall we return to the reading?" Jessica gave a tight nod and sat, smoothing her skirt as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the room. Mr. Kaplan continued, his voice more strained now. To my beloved wife, Evelyn, I leave our family home, its contents, and 50% of remaining assets after specific bequests have been fulfilled. Jessica inhaled sharply. To my eldest son, Andrew, and his wife, Jessica, I leave 20% of the remaining estate, along with the signed first edition collection from the library. Her hands tightened around her notepad. The pen finally stopped tapping. To Daniel Harper, my youngest son, I leave, but none of us were really listening anymore. Jessica leaned toward Mr. Kaplan, her tone clipped. He must have written that while he was already ill. I doubt he understood what he was signing. Mr. Kaplan looked up, his brow raised. Mr. Harper executed this will with full legal capacity, witnessed and notarized. She opened her mouth again, but he held up a finger. There is one final clause, he said, setting aside the papers and folding his hands. We all looked at him. No assets in this will may be distributed, he said slowly, unless all primary beneficiaries, Evelyn Harper included, have signed the release agreement. Without her signature, the estate remains in probate indefinitely. The air in the room shifted. Andrew finally looked at me. His lips parted slightly, as if to say something. Jessica's face paled. What? She said. She has to sign. Mr. Kaplan didn't blink. Not necessarily. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time that morning, I saw something else in her eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. Jessica turned to me, mouth half open. Her confidence cracked, just a sliver, but enough. And I sat taller. In the silence that followed, only one thought echoed in my mind. Was I really that easy to erase in her mind? The phone rang for the 12th time that morning. I didn't answer. I already knew who it was. Jessica hadn't called this often in years, not even when William was in the hospital. But now, it seemed, every few hours, her name lit up my screen like a warning flare. The voicemails had shifted, no longer sharp and declarative, but hesitant, softer. Evelyn, I think we need to talk. Another. Can we find a way forward? For the sake of the family? I let them pile up. I spent most of the day in William's study, a room he once called the quiet heart of the house. Dust floated in the golden light through the high window, settling gently on the mahogany desk he'd refinished himself the year we retired. The grandfather clock ticked steadily in the corner, keeping time the way William always did, unshaken, exact, patient. The scent of old paper and wood polish lingered in the air. On the shelves, his books sat in neat, alphabetized rows. A globe in the corner still spun with a wobble, the result of too many twirls during vacation planning. Daniel arrived mid-afternoon. He knocked, then opened the door just far enough to peek in. You have a minute? He asked. Always, I said. He stepped in, hands in his pockets, then withdrew a manila envelope. It had a small red sticker on the seal and my name written in William's precise handwriting. Dad gave me this about a month before he passed, Daniel said, his voice low. Said I should give it to you, but not until after the will reading. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for it. Daniel didn't sit. He just gave a soft nod and said, Take your time, before stepping out and pulling the door shut behind him. The ticking of the clock filled the silence once more. I held the envelope in my lap for a long while, running my fingers along the edge, feeling the tension sealed inside it. When I finally broke the seal, the sound of the adhesive tearing seemed louder than it should have been. Inside, a letter in William's handwriting, 2 pages long and several folded documents clipped together. I unfolded the first page slowly. My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you, and I'm sorry for that. But I need you to know some things I couldn't say out loud, not because I didn't want to, but because saying them might have hurt you more than helped you. My eyes blurred, but I kept going. About 6 months ago, Jessica came to me. She was in financial trouble, bad investments, unpaid loans. She asked me for a significant sum. I offered to help her plan a way out, to budget, to learn. But she didn't want help. She wanted control. And when I said no, she became angry, said things that stunned me, things about you. I paused. The paper rustled as I adjusted my grip. She told me you were manipulative, that you were only staying with me for the house, the money, that you didn't care if I lived or died. She said you were already preparing to contest anything I left you, that she'd do the same. I knew it wasn't true. I knew the truth because I lived beside you, Evelyn. I saw your quiet sacrifices, your strength, your grace. The pages trembled in my hands, but I also knew Jessica was determined, that she would stop at nothing to take what she thought she deserved. That's when I changed the will. That's when I added the clause. You hold the pen now. Use it wisely. I placed the letter gently on the desk and leaned back. My heart raced, not with fear, but with the sudden weight of knowing I hadn't imagined it. The tension, the coldness, the sideways glances over the last few years, there had been more beneath the surface than I'd wanted to admit. I unfolded the clipped documents, bank records, withdrawals from shared accounts I didn't even know existed, notes in William's handwriting. Jessica withdrew $12,500 on June 14th without explanation. Another met with a state attorney, told him I felt pressure from Jessica. Each page was another small tremor. The last line of the letter brought the quake. If you're reading this, she's already tried to strip you of everything. Don't let her. I pressed the pages to my chest and closed my eyes. I had spent the past week wondering if I'd misjudged, if maybe I hadn't done enough, if Jessica's cruel outburst had some twisted grain of truth. But now, I knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't losing my memory or my value. William had seen it. He had believed me. He had protected me. Outside the window, birds chirped. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a lawnmower rumbled to life. The world was still turning. I returned the documents to the envelope, slid it into the drawer where William had once kept his favorite pens, and folded my hands once more. Only now, they were steady. Jessica's voicemails kept coming that night, but I didn't return her calls. If her plan was to manipulate me, she didn't know who she was playing with. Had I raised a family that truly saw me as disposable? That question didn't hurt as much now, because for the first time in a long while, I knew the answer. And it wasn't what Jessica believed. Jessica smiled like she hadn't just tried to erase me from history. The invitation had come through Daniel, neutral ground, or so she hoped. She wants to make peace, he said over the phone. A family dinner, just give it a chance, Mom. I said yes, not because I believed her, but because I needed to see, face to face, what game she thought she was still playing. Her dining room gleamed like a catalog photo. Pristine white chairs, gleaming crystal stemware, tall candles flickering softly. Jazz hummed from a discreet speaker in the corner, mingling with the occasional clink of silverware as she adjusted the place settings unnecessarily. "Mother," Jessica said as I stepped inside, voice syrupy sweet, "so glad you could come." "Of course," I replied, handing her the small orchid I'd brought out of formality, not affection. She took it like it might bite her. Andrew stood behind her, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes flicking between us like he was watching a tennis match he never wanted to attend. Daniel gave me a short nod from across the room. Tom, Jessica's husband, appeared in the doorway, expression unreadable. The children, Lily and Max, sat quietly on the couch, their tablet screens lighting up their faces in blue. We were all here. The cast assembled. Dinner was pleasant, in the way fog is pleasant before a thunderstorm. Jessica floated through small talk, pouring wine, reminding everyone of birthdays and anniversaries. The roast chicken was excellent. She hadn't cooked it, of course, but the caterer had done a fine job. I played along. I smiled. I passed the butter. I asked Lily about her art project and Max about soccer. But I waited. I waited for the curtain to lift. It didn't take long. I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, Jessica said during dessert, dabbing her mouth with her napkin as if we were on the veranda of some southern estate. I set down my fork. He really relied on us during his final months, she continued, looking around the table. I mean, I was practically living here, making sure he had everything he needed. Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. Andrew looked down at his plate. Jessica pushed on. Mom was always so busy, she said, tilting her head toward me with feigned regret. I get it, book club, volunteering, but someone had to step in. I inhaled slowly. Is that so? Yes, she said brightly. Remember when he fell last spring? I was the one who rushed over. Took him to the ER. No, I said calmly. Mrs. Peterson, our neighbor, found him. She called 911. I was already in the ambulance when you arrived. 3 hours later. Her smile flickered. Well, yes, but You came after your spin class, I added. I remember. You brought a smoothie. Jessica's jaw tightened. I did what I could. I reached into my purse and pulled out a slim folder. I placed it on the table and opened it carefully. March 15th, I said. William's cardiology appointment. You offered to take him. Canceled for a hair appointment. April 3rd, physical therapy. You forgot entirely. May 22nd, neurology consult. You said you had a migraine. She opened her mouth, then closed it. June 10th, I continued. You were supposed to bring him to the pharmacy. You went shopping instead. For shoes, Andrew cleared his throat. Evelyn, Daniel interrupted, voice firm. She documented everything, because Dad asked her to. Jessica turned to him, voice brittle. You're taking her side? There aren't sides, Daniel said, staring at her. There's just what happened. I slid the last sheet across the table, a printout of a nurse's note listing me as the primary caregiver during William's final hospital stay. Jessica stared at it like it was written in another language. And then, gently, I pulled out a folded letter, the one with William's handwriting I'd nearly memorized. I didn't want to do this tonight, I said. But since we're rewriting history, I read aloud, she was my anchor. The reason I lasted as long as I did. Jessica sees what she wants to see. But I saw Evelyn. Every single day. Her patience, her presence, her love. Jessica stood abruptly, knocking over her wine glass. The crimson stain bled across the white tablecloth. No one moved to clean it up. I came here tonight hoping for peace, I said, folding the letter again, but now I see what must be done. Jessica didn't speak, her lips pressed into a thin line. Andrew leaned back, silent. Tom looked away. The children had stopped watching their screens, and in that quiet moment as jazz played faintly behind us and the candlelight flickered over uneaten pie, one question repeated in my head like the ticking of William's clock. Did she ever love any of us, or just the money? The letter arrived certified. One glance at the envelope and I knew Jessica was taking this to court. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the kitchen table next to William's old coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim and faded inscription that read, Best Dad since 1982. But I already knew what it said. I'd seen the signs for days, her tone growing colder in the few voicemails she still left, her silence turning from wounded to weaponized. Still, reading the words made it official. Notice of intent to contest will. Allegation, undue influence, diminished capacity, elder abuse. The irony of it almost made me laugh. I called Mr. Kaplan immediately. I've been expecting this, he said, calm as ever. Don't worry, Evelyn, we're ready. 2 days later, I found myself seated at a long wooden table inside the downtown courthouse, the walls paneled in solemn oak. Above us, fluorescent lights buzzed with the low, steady hum of government buildings everywhere. The air smelled faintly of paper and something antiseptic. Jessica sat across the aisle, her lawyer beside her, sleek in a navy suit. She wore black, the kind of black chosen not for mourning, but for intimidation. Andrew sat beside her, pale, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Tom was one seat behind, alone. Daniel was on my side of the room, jaw clenched, eyes on his sister like he was watching a fuse burn down. The gavel cracked once. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Marilyn Chen entered, her face unreadable. The opening statements passed in a blur. Jessica's attorney spoke of influence, manipulation, cognitive decline. He painted a picture of me as some scheming widow, a woman who'd waited until her husband's final months to coerce a will change in her favor. Jessica sat beside him, nodding subtly, never once looking my way. Mr. Kaplan waited patiently. When his turn came, he stood with calm, measured grace. "Your Honor," he said, "before we respond to these allegations, I'd like to submit a key piece of evidence, one that speaks directly to Mr. Harper's mental clarity and intentions." Judge Chen raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Kaplan opened his briefcase and withdrew a flash drive. "May we play this?" The judge nodded. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the projector clicked to life, its mechanical hum slicing through the silence. And then, there he was. William appeared on screen, seated in the very study where I'd found his letter. He looked healthier, more solid than he had in his final months. His face was serious, his voice steady. "My name is William Harper," he began. "Today is June 15th. I'm recording this in the presence of my attorney, Robert Kaplan, and my physician, Dr. Sarah Chen." The camera panned to the right. Dr. Chen nodded, held up today's newspaper, and began a short series of memory and reasoning tests. William answered each one with clarity, even wit. Then he turned back to the camera. "I'm making this recording because I have reason to believe that after my death, my daughter-in-law, Jessica Harper, will attempt to contest my will. I want to make it absolutely clear that I am of sound mind and that every change in this document reflects my conscious, deliberate decision." He inhaled. "She has lied. About Patricia. About me. About our family. She has spread stories meant to diminish the person who has stood by me every day of my life for 48 years. A hush swept the room. Even Jessica's attorney stopped scribbling. She said Patricia didn't care for me, that she was cold, that she was absent. That's not true. That's projection. Jessica's face remained motionless, but her fingers gripped the edge of the table. "She lied to me. She told me she would take care of my estate responsibly, then withdrew thousands behind my back. She visited lawyers I never authorized, tried to access accounts that weren't hers, and when I confronted her, she threatened to claim I was being manipulated." He paused, his expression softening. "Patricia has never asked for anything. She never even asked to be mentioned in the will. All she's ever done is protect this family, often in silence, often unseen. But I saw her." My throat tightened. "She is the reason I lasted as long as I did. She was my anchor, my home. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're not telling the truth." The video ended. The lights came back on. For several seconds, the room was frozen. Judge Chen leaned forward slowly. "Do you have anything further to present?" Mr. Kaplan nodded. "Bank records, signed medical reports, witness affidavits, but I believe Mr. Harper has said it best." Jessica's attorney stood, requested a recess. Denied. "I've heard enough," Judge Chen said. "The will stands as written. Case dismissed." Jessica sat frozen. Her lawyer gathered papers in hurried silence. I didn't move for a moment. Then slowly, I exhaled. Not a triumphant breath, not one of gloating or relief, just release. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding everything in until that moment. People stood, chairs scraped, the courtroom emptied like water from a drain. I stepped outside into the crisp fall air, the courthouse steps cool beneath my shoes. Tom was waiting near the bottom, hands in his coat pockets, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. "Patricia," he said without preamble, "can we talk?" I nodded. "I'm filing for divorce," he said quietly. "I can't raise my kids in a house built on lies. I didn't know how deep it ran. I believed her for too long." I looked at him. "You're not the first person she fooled." He nodded. The kids will stay with me. She needs help, but she has to want it first." We stood there for a moment in silence, the wind tugging gently at our coats. Before I could reply, the courthouse doors swung open. Jessica stepped out, her heels loud on the stone steps. She saw us, her face twisted with fury. "This is your fault," she hissed at me. "You've ruined everything." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You did that to yourself." She turned away, disappearing into the back of a sleek black sedan. I remained where I stood, watching the leaves swirl across the pavement. Did I win? Or had we all just lost something precious? The estate was finally mine to distribute, but justice and vengeance are not the same thing. That morning, I sat across from Mr. Kaplan, sunlight casting long shadows across the bookshelves of his office. Outside, wind rustled the branches against the tall windows, and inside, the soft scratch of his pen against a legal pad kept time with the quiet ticking of the brass desk clock. I looked down at the documents before me, at the figures and clauses and neat outlines of what William had left behind. The court ruling was final. The estate was legally under my control. I could have chosen to close every door, shut Jessica out entirely, and no one would have faulted me for it. But that wasn't the kind of legacy I wanted to leave. "I'd like to set up a trust," I said, breaking the silence. Mr. Kaplan looked up from his notes. "For whom?" "For Lily and Max," I said. "Education, health care, a small monthly allowance until they turn 25, enough to give them stability, but not spoil them." He nodded slowly, pen pausing mid-air. "That's generous." "They're innocent in all this," I said. "They've already lost enough." He adjusted his glasses. "And Jessica?" "She keeps her share," I replied, watching his eyebrows rise. "All of it?" he asked. "With conditions." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Go on." 1 year of financial counseling, I said. Certified, not some online quick fix. 1 year of therapy, real therapy, with a licensed family therapist. Kaplan blinked, then gave a short, surprised laugh. "Frankly, I expected you to cut her off." "I almost did," I admitted. "But she's still their mother, and somewhere, under all the ambition and damage, she's still the woman my son once loved. The woman who brought 2 children into this world." I looked out the window, watching a swirl of leaves dance across the sidewalk below. "She needs to change," I continued, "but people don't change just because we punish them. Sometimes they change because someone still believes they can." Kaplan regarded me with something like admiration. "William would be proud of you." I smiled faintly. "He gave me the power. I'm just trying to use it wisely." The next Sunday, I invited the family to the house. Everyone came. Michael, Daniel, Andrew, their families, even Jessica. She arrived last, looking uncertain, her posture stiffer than usual, as if bracing for impact. She wore a gray sweater and flats, no designer labels, no expensive perfume. Her makeup was minimal. Her eyes, though, still held a trace of that guarded edge. We gathered in the living room. The fireplace was lit, casting a soft warmth over the room. Lily and Max sat quietly on the couch, their eyes flicking from me to their mother. I stood, papers in hand. "I've made my decision regarding the estate," I began. Jessica shifted in her seat. "The will stands," I said, "but with modifications." I turned to the children first. "Lily, maximum. There's a trust in your name now, for school, medical care, and support until you're grown." Their faces lit up, and Lily turned to her mother with a spark of hope. I continued. "As for Jessica," Jessica sat up straighter, jaw tense. "You'll receive your 20%, as outlined in the will," I said, "but you'll need to complete 1 full year of certified financial counseling and family therapy." The silence in the room was thick. Jessica blinked, once. "I don't deserve this," she said softly. "You don't," I replied without cruelty, "but your children do." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Tom, seated beside her, put a hand gently on her arm, grounding her. I handed her a folder. outlining the terms, the timelines, the contacts for the programs. She took it with trembling fingers. For a long moment, no one said anything. The logs crackled in the fireplace. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Then she spoke. "If I try? Really try? Will you be there?" I looked at her. Really looked. Not the manipulator from the courtroom, not the icy woman at the will reading. Just Jessica. Tired, frayed, cracked in places I hadn't seen before. "You'll have to find your own strength," I said, "but I won't walk away." She looked down, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." The children rushed over and hugged me without words. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling their warmth and weight, their small arms full of something fragile and real. We sat down for dinner afterward. No grand speeches, no forced smiles, just passing dishes, refilling glasses, the simple rhythm of shared food and second chances. And as I sat at the head of the table, William's old place, I found myself thinking of something he once said, years ago on a gray autumn day like this. Mercy isn't forgetting what someone's done. It's choosing not to become like them in return. Was it weakness to show mercy, or the strongest act of all? The garden William loved was in full bloom again, and for the first time in years, so was our family. From the back porch, I watched as Max darted between the raised beds, camera in hand, chasing a hummingbird that zipped past the lavender. Lily sat under the oak tree, sketching something in her journal, brow furrowed in concentration. Their laughter drifted across the yard, mingling with the bird song and the occasional creak of the porch swing beneath me. Inside, the house hummed with quiet movement. Footsteps on wood floors, cabinets opening in the kitchen, the low hum of a dishwasher. There was life here again. Not the carefully measured politeness that had once filled our dinners, but real, grounded joy, messy, noisy, ordinary. Jessica arrived on time that evening. She wore jeans and a simple cardigan, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She brought a casserole, chicken, and wild rice, and a bottle of iced tea. No labels, no performance, just food to share. "Mom," she said, and the words sounded different now. It landed softly, honestly. "How was therapy this week?" I asked as we set the table together. "Hard," she said. "We talked about Dad, about how I treated him, and you." I nodded, not as judgment, but acknowledgement. "I have so many regrets," she added quietly. "Regrets are just lessons with a rougher edge," I said, echoing something William used to say. Dinner was simple. Baked bread, salad, the casserole, and too many refills of lemonade. Andrew sat beside Jessica, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. Daniel brought dessert. A peach pie he proudly announced was homemade. Tom came by to pick up the kids, stayed for coffee, and even offered to mow the lawn next week. After the dishes were done and everyone had gone, I stood in William's study, letting the quiet wrap around me. On his old desk, beside his favorite globe and worn leather blotter, I placed a new photo in a silver frame. It was from Lily's birthday 2 weeks ago, taken on the beach, all of us standing close, wind in our hair, sun on our cheeks. Jessica stood slightly to the side, her smile real but cautious. Andrew had an arm around her. The kids beamed. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I touched the frame lightly, then the one beside it. An older photo from our 40th anniversary, William and me under the garden arch, both of us younger, unlined, laughing. "William," I whispered, "I did what you asked. I used it wisely." Later that night, as I turned off lights down the hall, the phone rang. It was Jessica. "I found something," she said. "An old video of Dad. He was talking about you. He said you were his anchor." My hand froze on the banister. "He said that?" I asked. "Yes," her voice thickened. "And he was right." Silence stretched between us, not awkward but full, heavy with everything said and unsaid. "I just wanted to say thank you," she added, "for giving me a second chance, for not giving up on me." I closed my eyes. Everyone deserves a chance to change, even if it takes time. After we hung up, I walked to the end of the hall and stood in front of the photo wall. The most recent one showed all of us, Jessica included, surrounded by balloons, barefoot in the sand, smiling like people who had let go of something heavy. I looked back at the 40th anniversary photo again, William, with his hand on mine. His eyes always knew. "You knew I could do this," I whispered. "You trusted me to carry on." I turned off the last light and stood in the darkness, not afraid, not alone. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was peaceful. It was earned. He hadn't just left me power. He had left me something more sacred, the chance to choose who we become after the storm.